A day at the park. The summer sun poured golden light over Maplewood Park, a bustling haven of families, friends, and solitary souls enjoying the weekend's serenity. In the center of this lively tableau, Leon and his daughter, Lily, spread out a checkered blanket beneath the sprawling branches of a towering oak tree. Leon, a tall black man with a warm smile and an air of quiet confidence, chuckled as Lily, a bubbly 6-year-old with curls as golden as the sunlight, showed him her latest crayon drawing. "Dad, look, it's you and me as superheroes," Lily exclaimed, her sky-blue eyes sparkling with pride. Leon leaned in, his smile widening. "You made me look so cool." "I love the cape," he said, giving her a high five. Lily giggled and tugged on her ponytail. "Of course, you're the coolest dad ever." Their bond was palpable, an unspoken language of love and trust that made the world outside their bubble feel insignificant. Leon had raised Lily from the day she was born. As her adoptive father, he never saw her as anything but his own. They shared everything: stories, jokes, adventures, and today was no different. Leon had packed their favorite picnic: turkey sandwiches, carrot sticks, and Lily's favorite chocolate chip cookies. As they ate, Lily chattered about her dreams for first grade, becoming the class president and organizing a superhero day. Leon listened, his deep laugh blending with her squeals of excitement. From a bench nearby, an older woman with sharp eyes and a stiff posture watched them. She clutched her purse tightly, her gaze flitting between Leon and Lily, her lips pressed in a thin line. Leon noticed but didn't let it bother him. He had encountered curious looks before. Being a black father to a white daughter often invited unspoken questions, and sometimes outright stares. Most people eventually smiled and moved on. But this woman didn't. Her expression grew sharper, and she seemed to whisper to herself before pulling out her phone. Unaware of her actions, Lily pointed toward the playground. "Dad, can I go play on the swings?" Leon smiled and ruffled her curls. "Of course. Just stay where I can see you, okay?" "Okay." Lily dashed off, her laughter trailing behind her as she ran toward the jungle gym. Leon leaned back against the tree, watching her with the proud vigilance of a loving parent. She climbed the jungle gym like a tiny explorer, her determination evident in every move. But peace has a way of slipping away when least expected. The woman on the bench lowered her phone, her eyes never leaving Leon. She stood, clutching her purse, and marched toward the playground. Her steps were deliberate, her face set with an expression Leon instantly recognized: suspicion thinly veiled as concern. Leon straightened, his eyes narrowing slightly. He was used to navigating moments like this, but it didn't make them any less infuriating. The woman approached Lily, her voice loud and clipped. "Excuse me, little girl. Where's your mother?" Lily paused mid-climb, gripping the metal bars of the jungle gym. "I'm here with my dad," she replied innocently, pointing toward Leon. The woman turned, her eyes locking on Leon, with a look that could freeze fire. Leon stood and walked toward them, his steps calm but deliberate. "Is there a problem?" Leon asked, his voice steady but tinged with steel. The woman folded her arms. "I was just making sure everything is okay. You don't look related." Lily slid down the jungle gym and ran to Leon, clutching his hand. She looked up at him, confused but trusting. "She's my daughter," Leon said firmly. The woman raised an eyebrow. "Well, you can't be too careful these days," she muttered, her gaze lingering on Lily as if searching for signs of distress. Leon knelt beside Lily, his voice softening. "Lily, why don't you grab your water bottle? I'll be right here." Lily nodded, her small face troubled, and ran back to their blanket. The woman didn't relent. "You can see how this looks unusual," she said, lowering her voice but keeping her tone accusatory. "A man like you with a child like her." Leon's jaw tightened, but his voice remained measured. A father spending time with his daughter shouldn't look unusual. Before he could say more, The faint sound of sirens in the distance cut through the air. Leon's heart sank as the woman's expression shifted to one of smug satisfaction. She glanced toward the park entrance, where the flashing lights of a police car appeared. Leon took a deep breath, his eyes flicking to Lily, who was now clutching her water bottle and looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. He knew he had to stay calm. For her, the park's lively chatter faded into a tense hush. Parents pulled their children closer, and onlookers whispered among themselves as the police car rolled to a stop. 2 officers stepped out, 1 man and 1 woman, their expressions neutral but serious. The woman marched toward them, waving her arms and gesturing toward Leon as she spoke rapidly. Leon couldn't hear her words, but he didn't need to. He'd seen this play out before. The male officer approached Leon, his hand resting lightly on his belt. "Sir, can we have a word?" Leon nodded, keeping his voice calm. "Of course." Behind him, Lily clung to the blanket, her eyes darting between her father and the flashing lights. Leon gave her a small, reassuring smile. The officer's questions came quickly, each one laced with suspicion. "What's your name? What are you doing here? Who is the child?" Leon answered each question with measured calm, despite the simmering frustration in his chest. "Her name is Lily. She's my daughter. We're here every weekend." The officer glanced at the woman, who stood nearby, her arms crossed and her mouth twisted into a self-satisfied smirk. "We received a call about a potential abduction," the officer explained, his tone tinged with doubt. Leon sighed and pulled out his wallet, retrieving his ID and a copy of Lily's adoption paperwork. This should clear things up. As the officers examined the documents, Leon knelt beside Lily, who had come closer, trembling. "Are we in trouble, Daddy?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart," Leon said softly, smoothing her curls. "We're not in trouble." But as he watched the officers confer, he knew this moment. This breach of peace would leave a lasting impact on his daughter. It was the kind of lesson no child should have to learn. The confrontation. The warm sun of Maplewood Park suddenly felt distant as Leon stood firm, the ground beneath him seeming colder than it had just moments before. The 2 officers, now poring over his identification and the adoption paperwork, exchanged measured glances. Their serious expressions only heightened the tension that had thickened the air. Lily, clutching her water bottle like it was a lifeline, stood close to her father. Her small frame pressed against his leg, and her blue eyes darted nervously between the officers and the woman who had started it all. "Sir, can you explain the relationship here?" asked the male officer, his voice polite yet tinged with the weight of unspoken assumptions. Leon kept his voice calm, though the edge of his frustration was palpable. "I'm Lily's father," he said, meeting the officer's gaze. "She's my daughter, adopted. We've been a family since the day she was born." The female officer looked up from the paperwork, her expression unreadable. "And you said you come here every weekend?" "That's right," Leon replied evenly. "This is our spot. We spend time here together, just like today." The woman who had made the call, standing a few steps away, interjected. "I was just looking out for the child," she said, her tone defensive now that the officers were involved. "It didn't seem right. I mean, look at them." Leon clenched his jaw, his frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. He turned to the woman, his voice firm but not raised. "You judged us based on how we look, not on who we are. My daughter doesn't deserve that." "Neither do I." The officers seemed to sense the tension rising. The male officer raised his hand slightly, gesturing for calm. "Let's take a step back," he said. "We're here to ensure everyone's safety. We'll verify the documents and confirm there's no issue." Leon's patience was being tested, but he remained composed. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I've got nothing to hide." Meanwhile, Lily tugged on his sleeve, her small voice breaking through the strained atmosphere. "Daddy, why are they looking at us like that?" she asked. Leon knelt down, his heart aching as he saw the confusion and fear in her eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said gently. "Sometimes people make mistakes. But we're not in trouble, I promise." The female officer approached, holding the documents carefully. "Everything checks out," she said, her tone softening slightly. "Mr. Bennett, we're sorry for the inconvenience." The male officer nodded, returning Leon's ID and papers. "Thank you for your cooperation." Leon stood, his posture strong but his eyes weary. "I understand you have a job to do," he said, "but moments like this leave scars on both of us." He glanced down at Lily, who clung to his leg with wide eyes. Before the officers could leave, the woman who had called them stepped forward again. "But you can't just ignore this," she exclaimed, her voice sharp. "This situation doesn't feel right. You should at least." The female officer interrupted her, her tone firm. "Ma'am, there's no evidence of wrongdoing here. The documents are legitimate, and Mr. Bennett has done nothing wrong. I suggest you let this go." The woman faltered, her self-righteous confidence giving way to discomfort. Her gaze flicked to Lily, who stared back with a mixture of fear and defiance. Leon took a deep breath and turned to the officers. "If we're done here, I'd like to get back to my day with my daughter." The officers nodded, and the female officer offered a faint smile. "Have a good day, Mr. Bennett. And again, we're sorry for the misunderstanding." As the patrol cars pulled away, the atmosphere in the park began to shift. Conversations resumed, though quieter and more hesitant. Parents who had watched the scene unfold avoided Leon's gaze, some out of shame, others out of discomfort. The woman who had started it all remained on the bench, her posture slumped as if weighed down by the realization of what she had done. Leon gathered their belongings, his mind racing. He knew the hardest part of the day was yet to come, helping Lily understand why they had been treated this way. As they walked toward the car, Lily finally spoke, her voice small but steady. "Daddy, that lady didn't believe we're family." "Why not?" Leon stopped, crouching down to meet her at eye level. "Sometimes people see differences and don't understand them," he said carefully. "But that doesn't mean they're right. We know who we are, and that's what matters." Lily nodded slowly, though the weight of the day lingered in her expression. "I love you, Daddy," she said, her arms wrapping tightly around his neck. Leon hugged her back, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And I love you, Lily, more than anything." As they drove home, the quiet in the car was filled with unspoken thoughts. Leon glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror, her gaze fixed out the window. He knew that today had marked her in a way she might not fully understand yet. But in that moment, he resolved to turn this painful experience into a lesson, not just for Lily, but for anyone willing to listen. It was a chance to show the strength of their bond and the power of understanding in a world too often divided by assumptions. Reflections and questions. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the car filling the silence between father and daughter. Leon's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the soft leather. He glanced at Lily through the rearview mirror. She was unusually quiet, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery, her thoughts seemingly far away. The confrontation at the park had shaken them both, but for different reasons. Leon had faced prejudice before, enough times to recognize its many forms. Yet every time it reared its head, it felt like an unexpected blow, a reminder of how the world still struggled to see beyond skin color and preconceived notions. For Lily, however, this was new, and Leon felt the weight of explaining the inexplicable to a child who saw the world through eyes untainted by prejudice. Finally, Leon broke the silence. "Lily," he began gently, "what's on your mind?" Her small voice came hesitantly. "Why didn't that lady believe you're my dad?" Leon sighed, his heart heavy. He had rehearsed these conversations in his mind before, knowing they would come, but now that the moment was here, it felt like walking a tightrope. He wanted to protect her innocence, but also arm her with the understanding she would need to navigate a world that wasn't always kind. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people don't understand things that are different from what they're used to." They see something that doesn't fit their idea of normal, and instead of asking questions, they make assumptions. Lily tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. Like when kids think broccoli is gross before they try it. Leon chuckled softly despite the weight of the moment. Kind of like that, he said. But it's not just about what they think. It's about how those thoughts make them act. That lady today, she thought something was wrong just because we don't look alike. And instead of asking us about it, she jumped to conclusions. Lily furrowed her brow. But that's not fair. You're my dad. You've always been my dad. You're absolutely right, Leon said firmly. It's not fair. And it's okay to feel upset about it. I feel upset too. But what matters most is that we know the truth, and nothing anyone says can change that. Lily nodded slowly, her small hands fiddling with the hem of her dress. Do you think she didn't like us because we're different? Leon paused, choosing his words carefully. I don't know what was in her heart, Lily. But I do know this. Some people are afraid of what they don't understand. That's why it's important for us to show them that love and family don't have to look a certain way. We can teach them by being ourselves and staying strong. Lily seemed to consider this, her bright blue eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. I don't want to make anyone feel bad, she said softly. But I don't want them to hurt us either. Leon reached back, his hand resting briefly on her knee. And you don't have to make them feel bad, sweetheart. Sometimes just being kind and patient is enough to help people see things differently. The rest of the drive was quiet but less heavy. Leon could see Lily processing everything, her young mind working to understand something so complex. He admired her resilience, her ability to face a hard truth, and still hold on to her compassion. Back home, the familiar comfort of their cozy living room provided a welcome refuge. Leon set their picnic bag on the kitchen counter, while Lily settled onto the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Can we talk more, Daddy? She asked, her voice small but steady. Of course, sweetheart, Leon said, sitting down beside her. Do you think it will happen again? She asked, her big eyes searching his face for reassurance. Leon hesitated. He wanted to say no, to promise her a world where this kind of pain wouldn't touch them again. But he couldn't lie. It might, he admitted, his voice gentle. There are still people who don't understand, and they might act in ways that hurt us. But what's important is that we don't let their actions change who we are. Lily leaned into him, her small head resting on his shoulder. I don't want people to think we're not a real family, she whispered. We are a real family, Leon said, his voice firm. No one gets to decide that for us. And every time we show the world how strong our love is, we help make it a better place, not just for us, but for other families too. Lily hugged him tightly, her little arms wrapping around his waist. I love you, Daddy, she said. I love you too, Lily. Always, Leon replied, his voice thick with emotion. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Leon sat in the quiet of the living room, his thoughts racing. Today's events had left a mark, not just on him, but on his daughter. He knew he couldn't shield her from the world's ignorance, but he could prepare her to face it with strength and grace. He pulled out his laptop and began typing. The words came slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. He wrote about their day, about the assumptions they faced, and about the love that bound their family together. He didn't know who might read it, but he hoped that sharing their story could spark a conversation, challenge a prejudice, or inspire someone to see the world differently. When he finally closed the laptop, the heaviness in his chest had lightened just a little. He wasn't just a father protecting his daughter. He was part of a larger effort to build a world where their story didn't have to be an exception, where love could speak louder than bias. As he turned off the lights and headed to bed, Leon glanced at Lily's room. The soft glow of her nightlight spilled into the hallway, a comforting reminder of her presence. She was his everything, and no assumptions, no prejudices, no ignorance could ever take that away. In the darkness, Leon resolved to face whatever came next with the same strength and love that had brought them through today. Because no matter what, their bond was unbreakable, and their story wasn't over, it was just beginning. A lesson in strength. The next morning, the sunlight streamed through the windows of their cozy home, but the warmth of the new day couldn't entirely dispel the lingering shadows of the day before. Leon stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes as the smell of fresh coffee wafted through the air. The rhythmic sound of the spatula against the pan was comforting, almost meditative, but his mind was far from at ease. From the living room, he could hear Lily humming softly as she colored at the coffee table. Her usual chatter was notably absent, replaced by a quiet focus that tugged at Leon's heart. Yesterday's confrontation had clearly left its mark on her, and he knew they needed to address it further. "Pancakes are ready," he called, keeping his voice light. Lily looked up, her golden curls bouncing as she hopped off the couch and joined him at the table. "Can we have extra syrup today, Daddy?" she asked, a flicker of her usual cheerfulness returning. "Extra syrup it is," Leon said with a grin, drizzling a generous amount onto her plate. As they ate, Leon decided it was time to broach the subject again. "Lily," he began, his tone gentle, "I was thinking about what happened yesterday. Do you want to talk about it some more?" Lily hesitated, her fork hovering over her plate. "A little," she said finally. "It just feels weird. Like that lady didn't like us, even though she doesn't know us." Leon nodded, his heart aching at the confusion in her voice. "You're right. It is weird. And it's not okay. But sometimes people act that way because they don't understand. It's not about us, Lily. It's about what they don't know." Lily tilted her head, her brow furrowing in thought. "But why don't they try to know? Why don't they just ask questions instead of being mean?" "That's a great question," Leon said, leaning forward. "Sometimes it's easier for people to stick to what they think they know than to challenge their own ideas. It takes courage to admit you might be wrong or to learn something new." Lily chewed her pancake thoughtfully. "So it's kind of like when I didn't want to try spinach. But then I did, and it wasn't so bad." Leon chuckled. "Exactly. Except instead of spinach, it's about understanding people and families that might be different from theirs." Lily nodded slowly. "I wish we could tell that lady about us. Maybe then she'd understand." Leon smiled at her earnestness. "You know, we can't control how other people act, but we can control how we respond. And every time we show love and patience, even when it's hard, we're helping to teach the world a little bit more about what's right." After breakfast, Leon decided they needed to do something to lift their spirits. "How about we go to the library today?" he suggested. "We can pick out some new books and maybe grab a treat on the way home." Lily's eyes lit up. "Yes, can we get another superhero book? And maybe a mystery one too?" "Absolutely," Leon said, ruffling her curls. The library was a haven for them, a place where they could lose themselves in stories and ideas. As they wandered through the aisles, Lily excitedly pointed out books she wanted to borrow, her earlier concerns momentarily forgotten. Leon found himself drawn to the parenting section, scanning the titles for anything that might help him navigate moments like the one they had experienced at the park. He picked up a book on raising resilient children, flipping through its pages as he thought about how best to prepare Lily for a world that wasn't always fair. Meanwhile, Lily had settled into a cozy reading nook, her small frame curled around a colorful picture book. Leon watched her from a distance, marveling at her resilience. Despite everything, her curiosity and joy shone brightly, a testament to her strength and innocence. On the way home, they stopped by a small cafe for ice cream. Lily chose strawberry, her favorite, while Leon opted for classic chocolate. As they sat at a corner table, enjoying their treats, an elderly man at a nearby table struck up a conversation. "You've got a wonderful little girl there," he said with a warm smile. "Thank you," Leon replied, his own smile genuine but cautious. She's got your smile, the man added, and Leon chuckled softly. Maybe she does, Leon said, glancing at Lily, who beamed at the compliment. As they left the cafe, Leon felt a renewed sense of hope. Not every stranger they encountered was quick to judge. Some were kind, open, and willing to see the love that defined their family. That evening, as they settled in for their nightly routine, Lily asked if they could read one of her new books together. Leon chose a story about a young girl who overcame challenges with bravery and kindness. As they read, he could see Lily's shoulders relax, the tension from the past day slowly melting away. When the story ended, Lily looked up at him, her blue eyes wide. "Daddy, do you think I can be brave like the girl in the story?" Leon pulled her into a hug. "You already are, sweetheart," he said. "You're one of the bravest people I know." Lily smiled, her arms wrapping tightly around his neck. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, Lily." "Always," Leon replied, his voice steady and full of conviction. As he tucked her into bed, Leon felt a sense of peace. The day had been about more than just moving past what had happened. It had been about growing stronger together. And as he turned off the lights and closed her door, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, their bond would carry them through, turning pain into purpose. The following days brought a sense of calm, but the echoes of their experience at the park lingered in Leon's mind. Each time he looked at Lily, her carefree laughter as she colored, her wide-eyed excitement over a bedtime story, he felt the weight of his responsibility as her father. It wasn't just about protecting her from the world's ignorance. It was about teaching her to rise above it, to stand tall and strong, and to shine with the love and light that defined her. As Leon sipped his morning coffee, his mind turned to the countless other families who might have faced similar situations. The thought made him restless. He couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could help shape the future. That evening, after Lily was tucked into bed, Leon sat at his desk, staring at a blank page on his laptop. Slowly, he began typing, pouring his thoughts into words. He started with their story, recounting the events of that day at the park, the assumptions, the confrontation, the questions, and the moments of quiet resilience. But as he wrote, the narrative shifted. It became less about what had happened and more about what could be done to create a world where moments like these were rare. He wrote about the importance of empathy, about teaching children to see beyond appearances, and about fostering conversations that challenged stereotypes. His words were raw and honest, shaped by his love for Lily and his hope for a better future. By the time he finished, the clock had ticked past midnight, but he felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted. Leon shared the piece on a blog he had started years ago, but rarely updated. He wasn't sure who would read it, but he knew he had to try. He closed his laptop and went to bed, his heart full of resolve. The next morning, Leon was surprised to find an outpouring of comments and messages on his blog. People from all walks of life had read his post, and their responses were overwhelmingly supportive. Some shared their own stories of facing prejudice. Others simply expressed gratitude for his honesty and courage. Leon felt a spark of hope. His words were resonating, making an impact. One message, in particular, caught his attention. It was from a local community leader who ran a program promoting diversity and inclusion. She invited Leon to speak at an upcoming event, saying his story was exactly the kind of message their audience needed to hear. Leon hesitated. He wasn't used to public speaking, and the thought of standing in front of a crowd made him uneasy. But then he thought of Lily, her questions, her strength, her determination to understand a world that didn't always make sense. If he could help her by helping others, wasn't it worth stepping out of his comfort zone? He replied to the invitation with a tentative yes. The event was held at a community center, its walls adorned with vibrant artwork celebrating diversity. As Leon walked in hand with Lily, he felt a mixture of nerves and determination. The room was filled with people of all ages and backgrounds, their chatter a low hum of anticipation. Lily squeezed his hand. "Are you nervous, Daddy?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. "A little," Leon admitted with a smile. "But it's a good kind of nervous. It means I care about what I'm doing." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "You're going to be great, just like a superhero." Her words brought a swell of warmth to his chest. "Thanks, kiddo," he said. "You're my superhero too." When it was time for Leon to speak, he stepped onto the small stage, his heart pounding. He looked out at the audience and took a deep breath. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm here to share a story, not just about what happened to me and my daughter, but about what it taught us and what we can all learn from it." He spoke about the day at the park, about the assumptions that had been made and the impact they had. But he didn't dwell on the negative. Instead, he focused on the lessons about love, understanding, and the power of breaking down barriers through empathy and kindness. He shared how Lily's innocent questions had challenged him to think deeply about how to prepare her for the world while preserving her joy and resilience. The room was silent, every eye fixed on him. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. People approached him afterward, thanking him for his words and sharing their own experiences. Some even asked how they could help spread the message of inclusion and understanding in their own communities. That night, as Leon tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with a sleepy smile. "Did you save the day, Daddy?" she asked, her voice soft and full of trust. Leon chuckled and kissed her forehead. "I think we both did, sweetheart," he said. "You helped me be brave." As he closed her door and stepped into the quiet hallway, Leon felt a deep sense of purpose. What had started as a painful moment had become an opportunity, not just to stand up for himself and Lily, but to inspire others to see the world differently. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but he also knew they would face them together, with love and strength guiding their way. For Leon, this was more than just a response to what had happened. It was a beginning, a chance to turn their pain into purpose, to teach the world one story at a time that love transcends appearances, and that the bonds of family are unbreakable, no matter what. The momentum from the event carried over into Leon's daily life. The speech had sparked something in him, a sense of empowerment he hadn't fully realized before. It wasn't just about their story. It was about the countless stories like theirs that went untold, buried under the weight of misunderstanding and prejudice. Leon realized he had a platform, however small, to amplify those voices and challenge the status quo. A week after the event, Leon received an email from a local journalist who had heard about his speech. The journalist wanted to feature Leon and Lily in an article about unconventional families, highlighting their love and resilience in the face of societal biases. Leon hesitated at first. He valued his privacy and didn't want to expose Lily to unnecessary attention. But after some thought, he decided it could be an opportunity to make a difference. When Leon told Lily about the article, she was ecstatic. "Can I draw a picture for it?" she asked, already reaching for her crayons. "Of course," Leon said, smiling. "Draw something that shows what family means to you." Lily spent hours at the kitchen table, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked on her masterpiece. When she was done, she proudly held it up for Leon to see. It was a colorful depiction of the two of them holding hands under a rainbow. Above their heads, she had written in her wobbly handwriting, "Family is love." Leon's chest tightened as he looked at the drawing. "It's perfect," he said, pulling her into a hug. "You're amazing, Lily." The article was published a few weeks later, and it quickly gained attention. It wasn't just their story that resonated, it was the universal truth behind it. Families came in all shapes, sizes, and colors, and love was the thread that bound them together. The response was overwhelming. Leon received messages from parents, teachers, and community leaders, all expressing their support and gratitude. Some even shared their own stories of overcoming biases and building bridges of understanding. Among the messages was one from the woman who had called the police at the park. Her words were hesitant but sincere. "Dear Mr. Bennett, I read about you and Lily in the newspaper, and I want to say I'm sorry. I didn't see you for who you are, a father who loves his daughter deeply. Instead, I let my own assumptions cloud my judgment. I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm trying to learn and do better. Thank you for sharing your story and teaching us all a valuable lesson. Sincerely, Margaret." Leon sat with the letter for a long time. He didn't know if her change of heart was genuine or if it was spurred by the backlash from the article, but he decided to take her words at face value. Forgiveness, he reminded himself, wasn't just about the other person. It was about finding peace within. In the months that followed, Leon and Lily's lives took on a new rhythm. They still went to the park every weekend, spreading their checkered blanket under the same oak tree. But now, their presence seemed to spark something different in the people around them. Curiosity replaced judgment, and smiles replaced stares. Some parents even approached them, striking up conversations and inviting Lily to join their kids on the playground. Leon noticed a change in Lily too. She was more confident, more aware of the world, but still full of the boundless joy and compassion that defined her. One day, as they sat together on the blanket, watching the sunset, she turned to him and said, "Daddy, I think we helped people. I think we made them see that families don't have to look the same to be real." Leon's throat tightened, and he nodded. "We did, Lily. And you know what? We're going to keep helping, one little step at a time." Lily grinned, leaning against him as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. "Then let's keep being superheroes." Leon laughed, wrapping an arm around her. "You got it, partner." For Leon, the journey wasn't over. There were still biases to confront, still hearts and minds to change. But as long as he had Lily by his side, he knew they could face anything. Together, they were a testament to the unshakable power of love, and they were ready to keep making their mark on the world. And in that moment, under the fading light of the day, Leon felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Building a legacy. Months turned into a year, and Leon and Lily's lives continued to evolve in ways neither of them had imagined. The blog post, the community speech, and the article in the newspaper had transformed Leon from a father trying to protect his daughter into a voice for change. But with this new role came responsibility, and Leon found himself grappling with how best to use his platform to make a meaningful impact. One evening, as Leon was reviewing emails at the kitchen table, Lily sat across from him, her crayons spread out in a colorful mess. She was working on another drawing, humming softly to herself. "Daddy," she said suddenly, looking up from her work, "can we write a book together?" Leon paused, surprised. "A book? What kind of book?" "A book about us," Lily said matter-of-factly, "about how families like ours are awesome." Leon's heart swelled with pride. He had always encouraged Lily to express herself, but this idea was beyond anything he had expected. "You know what?" he said, smiling. "That's a fantastic idea. Let's do it." Over the next few months, their living room transformed into a creative workshop. Leon and Lily spent hours brainstorming ideas, sketching characters, and crafting stories that celebrated diverse families. Lily's imagination ran wild, and Leon marveled at her ability to capture big ideas with the simplicity and clarity of a child's perspective. The book, titled Families Come in All Colors, became a labor of love. It featured stories of children from different backgrounds, all discovering the unique strengths of their families. There was a girl with two dads who taught her to be brave, a boy whose grandmother raised him with wisdom and love, and a biracial girl who found her voice in a world that didn't always understand her. Lily insisted on illustrating the book herself, and her vibrant drawings brought the stories to life. Leon guided her, but he let her creativity take the lead. The result was a collection of tales that were as heartfelt as they were beautiful. When the book was finished, Leon reached out to a local publisher who specialized in children's literature. The publisher loved the concept and agreed to print a small run of the book. Leon and Lily were ecstatic, and on the day the first copies arrived, they celebrated with a pancake breakfast, complete with extra syrup, of course. Their book launch was held at the library, where they had spent so many afternoons together. The event was a blend of storytelling, laughter, and connection. Families of all kinds filled the room, and Leon felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment as he watched Lily proudly read excerpts from their book to an attentive audience. Families come in all colors and shapes and sizes, Lily said, her voice clear and confident. And what makes them special isn't how they look, it's how much they love each other. The room erupted in applause, and Leon couldn't have been prouder. The success of the book opened new doors for Leon and Lily. They were invited to schools, community centers, and even national conferences to share their message of love and inclusion. Leon often reflected on how far they had come since that day at the park. What had once been a painful encounter had blossomed into a movement that was touching lives and challenging assumptions. Through it all, Leon remained grounded. He made sure to carve out time for the simple moments with Lily, the movie nights, the trips to the park, and the endless games of hide and seek. He knew that while their mission was important, their bond as father and daughter was the heart of it all. One evening, as they sat on their favorite checkered blanket under the oak tree at the park, Lily turned to Leon with a thoughtful expression. "Daddy," she said, "do you think the world will ever be a place where people don't judge each other?" Leon looked out at the setting sun, his arm resting around her shoulders. "I don't know if we'll ever see a world like that," he said honestly. "But every time someone learns something new, every time someone chooses kindness over judgment, we get a little closer. And you and I, we're helping to make that happen." Lily nodded, her face lighting up with determination. "Then let's keep going. Let's help more people." Leon smiled, his heart full. "We will, Lily. We'll keep going, one step at a time." Years later, when Lily was grown, their book had become a beloved classic, and Leon's advocacy work had inspired countless others to share their own stories. But for Leon, the greatest success wasn't in the accolades or recognition. It was in the person Lily had become. She was strong, compassionate, and unafraid to stand up for what she believed in. And as she carried their message forward into the next generation, Leon knew that their legacy was secure. Because in the end, their story wasn't just about overcoming challenges. It was about transforming them into opportunities to create a better, brighter world. And as Leon watched Lily continue to shine, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey they had shared. Together, they had shown the world that love truly was the most powerful force of all. As time went on, Leon and Lily's story became more than a book or a speaking engagement. It became a ripple effect that inspired others to share their own journeys. Messages continued to pour in, letters from parents navigating similar experiences, from teachers looking for ways to foster inclusivity in their classrooms, and even from people who admitted that Leon and Lily's story had challenged their own biases. Despite their growing platform, Leon made it a point to keep their lives as grounded as possible. Lily still had her playdates, her favorite bedtime stories, and her weekend adventures at the park. They still enjoyed lazy mornings with pancakes and extra syrup. Leon knew that their day-to-day life was the foundation of everything they stood for, and he never wanted to lose sight of that. One Saturday afternoon, years after their book had been published, Leon and Lily returned to the park where it all began. Now a teenager, Lily had grown taller, her curls longer, and her curiosity sharper. But her smile and the light in her eyes were the same. As they spread out their familiar checkered blanket, Leon noticed an older woman sitting on a bench nearby. She seemed familiar, and as their eyes met, Leon recognized her. It was Margaret, the woman who had called the police on them years ago. Margaret hesitated before standing and walking toward them, her movements slow but deliberate. When she reached them, she offered a tentative smile. "Hello, Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice softer than Leon remembered. "And Lily, you've grown so much." Lily looked at her father, then back at Margaret, her expression curious but kind. "Hi," she said politely. Margaret took a deep breath. "I've been following your work," she said, her gaze flickering between them. "The book, the speeches, everything you've done. It's remarkable. And I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For that day. For how I acted. I didn't see the love you shared. I only saw my own assumptions." Leon studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity. He found it in the way her shoulders sagged slightly, in the way her eyes held an earnestness that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Margaret," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It takes courage to reflect on the past and admit mistakes. I hope you found ways to share what you've learned." "I have," she said, nodding. "I volunteer at the community center now, working with kids from all kinds of families. I've learned so much, and it's thanks to you and Lily." Leon glanced at Lily, who gave him a small smile and a nod. He turned back to Margaret. "I appreciate that, and I hope your story inspires others to grow, just as ours has." Margaret smiled, her eyes glassy with emotion. "Thank you," she said simply before turning and walking back to her bench. As the afternoon stretched on, Leon and Lily played frisbee, ate sandwiches, and laughed under the shade of the oak tree. The park was lively, filled with the sound of children's laughter and families enjoying the day. Leon noticed how no one stared anymore, how the world around them seemed just a little more open than it had been years ago. As they packed up to leave, Lily paused and looked at her father. "Do you think we've done enough, Daddy? Do you think the world's a better place now?" Leon smiled and crouched down to her level, brushing a stray curl from her face. "You've done more than enough, Lily. But the world is always changing, and it always needs people like you, people who see the good and help it grow." Lily grinned. "Then I'll keep going, just like you taught me." Leon hugged her tightly, his heart full. "And I'll always be right here, cheering you on." In the years that followed, Lily grew into a passionate advocate for inclusion and empathy, carrying forward the legacy she and her father had built together. Leon watched with pride as she spoke at events, mentored younger kids, and continued to challenge the world to be better. For Leon, the journey had been one of transformation, not just for himself and Lily, but for everyone their story had touched. What had begun as a moment of pain and misunderstanding had blossomed into a movement of love and understanding. And as Leon sat on their familiar checkered blanket, watching Lily inspire a new generation, he knew that their story had no true ending, only new beginnings, filled with hope, purpose, and the unbreakable bond of family. Because in the end, it wasn't just their story, it was everyone's story. A reminder that love, in all its forms, had the power to change the world.